They were out early one morning, panning in the stream for gold, surrounded by the rising mountains. Old prospector with a tale for two, he brushed around in the pan, pointing out what lay within was ordinary sand. He began with his story about 20 years before, and the younger man who sought his fortune. With a tear or two he told of searching for his treasure, but making known the gold he sought was ordinary pleasure. There were years of doing without, and there were years of plenty. He started thinking that life was never steady, excepting when the bills came in and he had no money to pay. Whiskey had never tasted better ordinarily. Concluded his story as it filled the air with a laugh, saying how he found the Lord and Savior, and how he found the river of life by which his day unfolds, and pointing out what stands within is not ordinary gold, and pointing out what stands within is not ordinary gold. Trust in God, believe upon His promises. Through His word we can see His wonders, signs and miracles of His love. We can return His love with devotion, standing on His word before all men. We are His beloved and His chosen, walking in this life renewed with peace. Trust in God, believe upon His promises. promises. Through His Word we can see His wonders, signs and miracles of His love. We can return His love with devotion, standing on His word before all men. We are His beloved and His chosen, walking in this life renewed with peace. Trust in God, believe upon His promises. Trust in God, believe upon His promises. Believe upon His promises.
All right, welcome. I'm Mark Wallace. This is True North Studio, and today the title is Outgrow Your Space. Growth is a funny thing. It changes you. As your feet got bigger, mom bought you new shoes. As you got better at your job, you got a better job. As you got faster, smarter, and stronger than everyone else on your team, you got moved up to a better team. Every time we outgrow our current space, a new opportunity appears. Advancement is a side effect of growth. That's how God set things up. We had a kid in our suburban Texas neighborhood named Neil. He was super nice, average size, good-looking boy with thick, blonde, wavy hair that seemed to fall over one of his eyes, making him a man of mystery. The girls went crazy over him. One summer I didn't see Neil much. He didn't come out to play with the rest of the kids. Maybe he wasn't feeling well. Maybe he got a job. Maybe he did something stupid and got grounded for the summer. When fall rolled around, we all went back to school and I finally saw Neil. He was no longer the cute little blonde kid all the girls loved. He had grown almost 10 inches that summer. Plus he put on maybe 40 pounds. Plus he had come down with an acute case of acne. He had changed from cute little Neil into huge, hulking Neil. And when I saw him, I had to blink twice and shake my freckled head just in case I was seeing things. I walked around him like a scientist studying a newly received museum specimen. What? Neil's growth spurt changed everything about his teen years. His new size attracted a whole totally different set of girls. He seemed to hang out with the biggest of big kids at school now. He even changed sports. I didn't see Neil much after that. He outgrew us as he outgrew his old self. Neil's growth spurt was thrust on him. It was not his choice. The type of growth I'll be talking about today is not about the natural growth of a too large child. Nope. I'll be talking about personal growth, those daily decisions that change everything. As an adult, all growth takes conscious effort over time. And how well we deal with change. We're going to be greatly rewarded when we find a way to outgrow our space. Now, one of Job's friends, while fumbling around trying to help him make sense of his loss, happened to get something right when he said, quote, and though your beginning was small, your latter days will be very great. Job 8:7. We don't just go through life, we grow through life. The lesson here is that once you outgrow your space at work, in your art, with your music, your sport, your ministry, new doors will immediately begin to open for you. Romans 12:2 from the Message says, don't become so well adjusted to your culture that you fit into it without even thinking. Instead, fix your attention on God. You'll be changed from the inside out. Readily recognize what He wants from you and quickly respond to it. unlike the culture around you, always dragging you down to its level of immaturity. God brings out the best of you, develops well-formed maturity in you. When you're finally ready to advance, finally ready to make more money, finally ready to produce better music, ready to write that book, finally ready to lose that weight, ready to put your ding in this crazy old world, then you're ready to grow. But if we keep doing the same things in the same old ways, but expect some giant growth spurt, we may be a little insane. Life doesn't work that way. I was recently reminded of a great quote from the late psychologist Dr. Carl Jung when he said, "We don't solve our problems, we outgrow them." We have to change something to change something. Change takes forward, upward movement. Now here's a cool verse that really made me think. James 4:8, as we move toward God, He moves towards us. What does that mean? I thought God was just a given machine, the one who makes things right no matter what. But this verse seems to say that we have a part in our growth and in that receiving of what God has promised us. As we move systematically toward what we want, it will systematically move closer and closer to us. When you believe, you will receive. God makes sure of it. So what do you want? What do you need? What are you willing to put energy into so you can move forward, advance, get it right, and take it further? The basketball great Larry Bird said, quote, "I've got a theory that if you give 100% all the time, somehow things will work out in the end." End of quote. Makes sense. So today let's look at a few pointers on how to outgrow our space so we can grow into a life that most people only read about. The 1% rule. Have you ever heard of the 1% rule? It's where you make small daily changes in trade for massive long-term results. It's not about quick, instantaneous growth. The 1% rule is about slow, incremental growth. You've seen enough people gain all the weight back and more after a crash diet. You know about getting hurt at the gym when you tried to push it too hard, too fast. Like me, maybe you've even fallen for those get-rich-quick schemes that irritate your friends and leave you with less than you started. The 1% rule tells us to set our sights on improving by only 1% each day. You heard me. For big, long-lasting results, only try to change a tiny little bit each and every day. Add a little something into your routine. Or to quit a bad habit, take a little something out, just a little bit, and stick with it. Mark Twain once said, "Giving up smoking is the easiest thing in the world." I know because I've done it thousands of times. Just keep quitting. Just keep quitting. Change is never easy. Our minds and bodies, friends and family usually want us to go back to the way things were. Our friends and our bodies like our old homeostasis. They like the old us. Keep pushing, but when you fail, pick yourself back up and keep quitting or keep getting stronger. Those tiny changes will compound, and over time they will generate massive growth for you. Add into your daily routine behaviors that will benefit you. If you're a writer, then set a time and write every day. I do. If you're a musician, then practice every day. Don't miss a day. If you're trying to improve your work skills or your income, then do a little something every day that moves you closer to your goal. Try to build a good habit. If you're a runner, then lace up those shoes on a schedule and hit the trails or treadmill. Don't add too much too fast. Grow into it. If you're a mom, well, you're already doing a lot. You deserve a nap. I slowly left a ministry that I dearly loved because I had grown one way and it grew another. I no longer fit in their space. I'd learned many good things and had trained myself to live on very little. This practice can be both good and bad. Good if you're starting over all the time, and bad if you ever want steady abundance. After 27 moves spanning 30 years, coupled with multiple career changes, Josephine and I lived Spartan. We had no extra anything, nothing to slow us down. Everything we owned could fit into one large U-Haul. The problem was I had inadvertently set a mental ceiling on wealth and income. Sure, we taught abundance, and maybe in some ways we lived it, but it wasn't at the level I wanted any longer. I knew I had to change something, but what? A friend of mine observed my struggle, and she gave me a book about incremental changes. I devoured it and looked for more books like it. Unintentionally, I started reading a book a week. Plus, I slowly fell into a daily exercise habit. I started to go to bed at the same time, which caused me to get up at the same time every day. Because I was up early, I just sort of began to work on my next teaching every single day before everyone else in the house got up. Then I started running on a schedule, slowly expanding my distance, experimenting with different shoes and gear. I started a small business and asked friends for side work to tide me over. I also studied for certifications and licenses, knowing I would need to work longer than most people. Shifting from my nomadic minister mindset to a stable working Joe and to not lose my heart and passion for God took focus and time. It didn't happen fast. It wasn't easy, but my finances slowly began to grow. I became physically, mentally, and spiritually stronger, and my teachings have hopefully improved a little bit too. Well, the 1% rule began to compound for me. The effect of those good daily habits began to become noticeable. Thanks to my friend and her book, I outgrew my space. Quote, permit yourself to change your mind when something is no longer working for you. Nidra Glover Tawwab. Isn't that how God designed this whole universe? If you want something, grow towards it. Put in the time, put in the work. But be patient. Be patient. That reminded me of another famous quote by Albert Einstein. We can't solve our problems from the level of thinking which created them. Got to think about that one. Move toward that thing, and that thing is going to move towards you. It's a spiritual principle. That's the design of creation. It's impossible to fail if we just keep failing in the right direction. Just keep growing, and you will outgrow your current space. That's the 1% rule. Now, find your perfect environment. Now, sometimes when we're finally ready to grow faster, we need to find our perfect environment. Being in the right place at the right time can be very helpful in our quest to outgrow our space. Now, during a recent visit to the Sequoia National Park in California, I saw the biggest tree on Earth. A tree named the General Sherman. The General Sherman. I had studied about it when I was a young forestry student in college. So this was bucket list. Bucket list. This woody giant is not the tallest, but he's by far the biggest living tree on the planet. Plus it's over 2,200 years old. And it's still growing maybe an inch wider every year. It was a young seedling when Jesus was still in diapers playing with wood shavings from his dad's shop. The General Sherman tree is so wide, it would take maybe 19 people holding hands to make a complete circle around its base. It's taller than an 11-story building. These massive sequoias naturally grow into giants just one place on Earth. One place. Only on the western slope of the Sierra Nevada mountains. Only between 5,000 and 7,000 feet in elevation and requiring a very specific heat and humidity index. Plus, the giant sequoias are born of fire. Unlike most trees, they need wildfire to thrive. Without fire, they can't live or reproduce. Giant sequoias typically require fire for their cones to open and release their seeds. Also, their thick cork-like bark is fire resistant. Not only that, but those wildfires that rip through the forest, they kill off thousands of other species of trees that compete with the sequoias for water, nutrients, and sunlight. Plus, the newly burnt undergrowth makes for a fertile seedbed. It's perfect for the tiny sequoia seedlings. And the cycle continues. There's only one perfect environment on Earth for the giant sequoias. And that is where the air is thin and the heat gets high and the snow gets deep on the western slope of the Sierra Nevadas. What's your perfect environment for growth? What's your perfect environment? For us, it may not be a place or an exact location. It may be a mindset, a headspace, or where your specific set of tools can be easily noticed. Where your tools can be noticed. Your perfect spot is usually where you fit, where you shine, where the best of you is manifest and noticed. Quote, "The most difficult thing is the decision to act, and the rest is merely tenacity." Amelia Earhart. I believe that as we push like hell to find and build our perfect environments, whatever that means, we will grow to our perfect height in business, in sports, in music, as a parent, a student, or as a child of the Creator. Like the giant sequoia, we too will more than fill our space as we continue to grow into our perfect environment, whatever that looks like. But when we get distracted from our gift, we will begin to live other people's dreams. And when that happens, we're not only unfulfilled, but we mess with the flow of creation. Don't mess with the flow of creation. Quote, "Don't give up trying to do what you really want to do. Where there is love and inspiration, I don't think you can go wrong." Ella Fitzgerald. Now is the greatest time for us to give of ourselves, to uncover our talent, and to grow into our gifts. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 11 from the Message says, "Friends, this world is not your home, so don't make yourselves cozy in it. Don't indulge your ego at the expense of your soul. Live an exemplary life among the natives so that your actions will refute their prejudices. They'll be won over to God's side and be there to join in the celebration when He arrives." People need what you have to offer. They need it. People need you to guide them to God using your particular gifts. Quote, "Be not afraid of growing slowly. Be afraid only of standing still." Chinese proverb. My wife has the uncanny ability to wade into pretty much any conversation, in any group, anywhere, and people will give her the floor and laugh at her many stories. A while back, I went with her to the eye doctor to help her pick out frames. I heard the sounds from the examination room. Sounds of laughing, but not just chuckles, but full-on belly laughing. You know, when she and the eye doctor walked out of the room, they strolled slowly down the hall, still talking, shoulder to shoulder. They talked like they were best friends forever. I stuck out my hand to the doctor to shake his hand, but he didn't even look at me. He didn't give me eye contact. She was the only blip on his radar screen at that moment. I just shook my head. That's Josephine using her gift again. Can you handle one more Josephine story? Well, we were having one of our twice-a-year neighborhood blowout parties at our house. Ooh, they're good too. You know, the food was delicious. The conversation was too loud, and the drinks were disappearing a little too quickly. As the party reached a fevered pitch, I walked outside to check on things. Around the glass-top patio table, the one with the big umbrella, there was a group of people listening and laughing in rapt attention as Josephine told stories. Not reading the room, I pulled up a chair and thought I would interject one of my own stories when Josephine finally took a breath. Well, just as I started, one of our well-watered neighbors, a huge muscular man, shushed me, and said, "Mark, I like your stories, but I think Josephine is the most interesting person on earth." With an ever so slightly bruised ego, I just smiled. Josephine has mastered her craft. She can, at the speed of words, form her perfect environment through story, no matter where she goes. Josephine is a unicorn when it comes to fast friendships. Her stories touch people's souls in minutes. She's honed her gifts since childhood and has made hundreds and hundreds of friends. I've seen her connect instantly with doctors, lawyers, moms, kids, retail employees, mega church preachers, and mafia dons. She uses her gift in ways I don't even come close. With her ability to read people quickly and tell the perfect stories, she brings her perfect environment with her, no matter where she goes, and she does it with such ease. Quote, "It is never too late to be who you might have been." It is never too late to be who you might have been. George Eliot. 1 Corinthians 13:11 from the NIV. "When I was a child, I talked like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put childish things behind me. Now we see a poor reflection as in a mirror. Then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known." Quote, "Life's challenges are not supposed to paralyze you. They're supposed to help you discover who you are." Bernice Johnson Reagan. In our future, we will clearly see the totality of who we were meant to be. But until that time, we keep plugging away and we keep growing. It's not always easy. In fact, growth is usually a struggle. Romans 5:3. "And not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings." We glory in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance. Perseverance, character, and character, hope. And hope does not put us to shame because God's love has been poured out into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who's been given to us. Quote, "If there is no struggle, there is no progress." Frederick Douglass. Even with the Spirit of God, growth can be painful at times. But any suffering we face can yield incredible learning, build strong character, and teach us to persevere. We can handle far more than we think we can. David Goggins, a former Navy SEAL and ultra athlete, said, quote, "Don't stop when you're tired. Stop when you're done." Then he adds, "When you think that you're done, you're only 40% into what your body's capable of doing. That's just the limits that we put on ourselves." End of quote. Let's find a way to outgrow our space. Philippians 3:14 from the ESV. "I press on toward the goal to win the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus." Paul is speaking here of the growth mindset. Growth requires constant practice, a consistent pushing of oneself, and some place to go. As long as we live on this side of heaven, we'll have to push ourselves. One day we will arrive, but as long as we're on this earth, there will always be room for growth. Now, actually, I think that there will be opportunities for growth throughout eternity. I mean it. A fulfilled life is never stagnant. Isn't the resurrected Christ right now preparing a place for us? John 14:2. Building indicates growth, doesn't it? If Adam and Eve had to work the garden in the first paradise, we too will have some type of work to do in the second paradise. That's growth. That's growth. Maintaining perfection in a free will environment is a process. Once those giant sequoias found themselves planted in their ideal environment and started growing, they kept growing for a long, long time. Once you find a place, a profession, a tribe, a job, a hobby, a calling that you fit into, and you're seeing personal growth, that's probably a good place for you. For now. Find your perfect environment. So, do I stay or do I grow? Do I stay or do I grow? This next point is easy to say, hard to do. How do we know when it's time to go? Time to make the switch, time to change careers, time to leave a job, a relationship, a church, a team, or an old group of friends. Well, healthy relationships should make you feel uplifted and energized. You should never feel emotionally exhausted. But if you don't feel loved, if you feel like you're carrying the relationship, if conflict stays unresolved, if the rules of the game always seem to fall in the other person or group's favor, if there's constant abuse of any kind, or if you begin to dislike yourself, it may be time to go. As humans, we're wired to keep the tribe together. We need each other. It's lonely out there. It's scary out there. But sometimes we have to make the hard choice. Do I stay or do I go? I've had to leave people, places, and groups that I dearly love because I no longer fit. I no longer fit. When I was 16, I foolishly left a perfectly good, loving home in search of adventure. There was no reason to leave. In my travels, I made some unsavory friends, to say the least. But in some weird way, and by the grace of God, they helped me stay alive and have fun doing it. That next summer, I changed. I became interested in, let's call it addicted to God and Christianity and truth and light and love. I changed from the inside out. I was no longer the same Mark. I thought differently. I talked differently about things. I even listened to different music. As fast as I changed, those people were done with me, and I to them. I no longer fit with those friends. I outgrew them. So I cut my long strawberry blonde hair. I moved back in with family, registered for my final year of high school, and left them all, never looking back. I searched far and wide for a group of Christians who lived like Acts, but who weren't religious about it. Within a year or so, I found a wonderful Christian ministry to grow with. They gave me purpose and endless opportunities for that adventure I so dearly needed. I grew into them, and their words grew into me. We were symbiotic. We were one. But like everything, every living organism, they too were growing and changing and adapting. Over a 30-year span, they had grown one way, and my wife and I grew another. When the leadership saw us slowly peeling away, like a crazed, jilted lover, they came at us with a suffocating vengeance, demanding we conform to their latest version of churchianity. We were done. It was time to leave that tribe and build another. We felt like the enlightened cave couple who were kicked out of the cave because they discovered fire. What to do with yourself after a major life growth spurt leading to a breakup from something or someone can be scary. In fact, it will be scary and lonely. The Apostle Paul made mention of this change, Romans 12:2. And be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. This transformation, this renewing happens over time and is usually accompanied with some sort of struggle. We no longer fit in that world. Have you ever had to painfully watch and wait for someone to change their horrible life situation for the better? You easily see how great their life could be if they just... Paul talks about this awaiting growth in others. Galatians 4:19 from the Message. Do you know how I feel right now? And will feel until Christ's life becomes visible in your lives, like a mother in the pain of childbirth. Paul was talking about the birth pangs of wanting someone to grow more than they want to. Christ never forces himself on us. We're the ones who must decide to be Christ-like. When I was a young forestry student in Nacogdoches, Texas, the land of tall women and virgin timber, we were required to spend many hours in the East Texas woods identifying trees. I loved every second of it, every second. Even our final exam was done mostly outside. We had to identify over 100 trees by looking at just a leaf, a twig, fruit, or the bark. One blazingly hot East Texas day, I came across a large tree in full leaf that I didn't recognize. And I thought I knew them all. In fact, I did know them all. The bark and twigs told me it was a red oak, Quercus rubra, for you dendrology fans. But the leaves weren't oak-like at all. The 3-part leaflets told me a completely different story. I stared at it for a few minutes trying to make sense. I looked on the ground for acorns or some kind of indicator, but I found none. It was weird to me. Every branch was covered with green and red leaflets. It was majestic, yet something was wrong. Something didn't fit. I walked around the tree looking for anything that could help me identify, and then I saw it. On the far side of that huge tree was a massive hairy vine as thick as my arm, growing straight up the backside of that tree. Its tentacles then spread out into every branch and every twig of that once mighty oak. The vine had been growing there so long it had literally grown into the tree, becoming the tree, choking the life out of it, and it overtook every branch. It was poison ivy. That poison ivy vine overgrew its space at the base of the oak and climbed higher. Now I hate poison ivy, and it hates me. Or maybe it loves me. But did you know that poison ivy is part of the cashew family? And its fruit feeds many woodland creatures and migratory birds? Sure. Even it has a place in this whole orchestra we call life. God takes care of more than just us. For us, it's usually good to adhere to the old Boy Scout adage, leaflets 3, let it be. It's poison ivy or poison oak. Berries white, poisonous sight. You know, my side point here is sometimes you no longer fit in a group, a job, or a relationship. Sometimes your gift, your fruit is no longer needed there, no longer wanted. You've done all you can do, and it's time to move on and let someone or something else enjoy that sunlight or those white berries. That's okay. You did your part. Be proud. Quote, we are products of our past, but we don't have to be prisoners of it. Rick Warren. Do I stay or do I grow? Now, practical tips for personal growth. Now I want to show you a few tips that have helped me grow in the direction that I wanted to grow. And all of them are pretty easy to do. I learned a long time ago that, quote, you have to change something to change something. You see, Romans 12:2 from the TLB, don't copy the behavior and customs of this new world, but be a new and different person with a fresh newness in all you do and think. Here's a few tips I use for personal growth. First one, read more or listen to audible books. Reading is one of the fastest ways to grow as a person. You're putting the wisdom of the ages into your mind. Reading changes you. I'm doing about 50 books a year now. Next one, exercise a few times a week. Keep your body moving. It's the only one you're going to get in this life. Next one, eat smarter, drink more water, and get more sleep. Now, we all hear about this all the time. I'm still trying to master it. Next one, keep your self-talk positive. Never silently put yourself down. Treat yourself at least as good as you treat your best friends. Be good to yourself. Next one, smartly invest your money and gradually increase the amount year after year. Be patient. Remember the 1% rule. Warren Buffett said, someone is sitting in the shade today because someone planted a tree a long time ago. Next one, adopt the 2-minute rule, which tells us that if we can do some task in 2 minutes or less, tackle it right then. Don't delay. This action will deliver long-term benefits, and it's going to make your partner very happy. So take out the trash, straighten your desk, do the dishes, give that hug, write that note, text or post. Do it in the next 2 minutes. Next one, embrace the suck. I first heard this phrase when I was a 16-year-old working alongside men who were freshly back from their year in Vietnam. Now, because I was young and stupid and lied about my age, I found myself working in a loud, dirty, dangerous steel fabrication shops next to these vets who were maybe 3 to 4 years older than me. They taught me to embrace the suck. Here's a quote. Let thee embrace me, sour adversity, for wise men say it is the wisest of course. That's William Shakespeare. Even way back in the days of Shakespeare, people embraced the suck, but said it with eloquence. Buddhists, endurance athletes, struggling musicians, and all moms all know what embracing the suck means. When I was still in my 20s, Josephine and I somehow washed up in Grand Island, Nebraska. It was a 1-year unpaid ministry assignment meant to be a challenge, a proving ground for self-development. The town had been devastated by 7 tornadoes that each put that city in their bullseye. I landed a job with a construction company rebuilding a meatpacking plant. On my first day at that job, and because I was the lowest man on the totem pole, an overlarge boss wearing a dirty white hard hat tilted down to his eyebrows told me to follow him as he waddled down to a pond at the edge of the property. Well, he put his thick, puffy hands on his hips, and then he pointed and ordered me to paddle this ugly gray rowboat out into that pond and drag back a thick black tarp floating on the stinky brown water. So I paddled out to the gargantuan tarp, tied it to the corner of the boat, and began to row back to the shore with all my might. It was heavy and it was sticky. Plus the pond was nasty and stunk like hell. But I kept rowing and rowing. When I finally got back to dry land, the big guy asked me if I knew what I just did. Well, I thought I did, but he told me anyway. He laughed and said, "Boy, you can now tell people you rowed a boat on a shit pond." Well, excuse the language, but that's exactly what he said. You know, then he told me that tarp had ripped in the storm and it was used to collect the methane gas coming off that cow poop pond, and that captured gas would run the entire meatpacking plant. So it was sort of important. It didn't take a genius to know that I had just embraced the suck. Hey, I needed the job. Quote, "The will to win, the desire to succeed, the urge to reach your full potential, these are the keys that will unlock the door to personal excellence." Confucius. Here's a few verses I use for spiritual growth. And I know that you have your favorites too, but these are some of mine. And first one is, be extremely persistent. Luke 11:8. "I say unto you, though he will not rise and give him, because he is his friend, yet because of his importunity or extreme persistence, he will rise and give him as many as he needeth. And I say unto you, ask and it shall be given you. Seek and ye shall find. Knock and it shall be opened unto you." I jokingly tell myself, keep pushing until they call security. You know, give like crazy. This is the next one. Luke 6:8 from the CEB. "Give and it will be given to you. A good portion, packed down, firmly shaken and overflowing will fall into your lap. The portion you give will determine the portion you receive in return." The next one. Put in the hard work. Ecclesiastes 9:10, "Whatsoever thy hand findeth to do, do it with thy might. For there is no work, nor device, nor knowledge, nor wisdom in the grave whither thou goest." Life has a time limit. It's a good idea to get started on your dreams today. Today! Remember the 2-minute rule. Next one. Expect God to supply, but know that he also expects us to use the tools he gave us. Ephesians 3:20, "Now unto him that is able to do exceeding abundantly above all that we ask or think, according to the power that worketh in us." Next one, do the right thing in the right amounts and nothing will be withheld from you. Psalm 84:11, "No good thing will he withhold from them that walk uprightly." Next one, put the word of God into your head. 2 Timothy 2:15, "Study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth." Put on some truth every day through study or a verse or an IG post from someone you connect with, or just think back on the words from that group you love so much. And the last one, I can do. Philippians 4:13, "I can do all things through Christ, which strengtheneth me." That's plenty of verses for now. We all have our favorites, and they're all pretty good. Quote, if you don't make the time to work on creating the life you want, you're eventually going to be forced to spend a lot of time dealing with a life you don't want. Kevin Nago. If we want to prosper in any aspect of life, we must outgrow our space. Isn't that how God designed the whole universe? Even the 13.7 billion year old universe is still expanding Still growing. Grow toward a thing, and that thing is going to grow towards you. That's what James, the brother of Jesus, said. Here's another quote. 20 years from now, you'll be more disappointed by the things you didn't do than by the ones you did do. Mark Twain. Sometimes growth is thrown upon you. Neil grew and found a totally new life and friends. Josephine's honed her gift to gab and blessed thousands. Hone your gift, whatever that is. To be a giant sequoia, you'll need to find your perfect environment. It may be a place, but will probably be a talent, a skill, or a mindset. Start anything new with small steps. Remember the 1% and the two-minute rules. Know that you will outgrow people, places, and jobs. You will outgrow people, places, and jobs. So there will be growing pains. Embrace the suck. Or as the bard said, embrace me, sour adversity. Most especially, hang on to those verses that help you grow through your current struggle. You can do more than you think you can do. When you grow through your comfort zone, something better will always open up to you. That's how we outgrow our space. God bless.